I served breakfast. My daughter-in-law complained right in front of her friends. That old woman only knows how to cook bad food. I do not know how I put up with her. They all laughed. I smiled. I collected the cups in silence and went to my room. 2 hours later, a truck pulled up in front of the house and she swallowed hard instantly. I know it sounds impossible. I know what you are thinking. How did a 68-year-old woman come to live that moment? But let me tell you exactly what happened that Tuesday morning, because every detail counts. Every word I heard, every breath I held as I clutched the porcelain cups against my chest. If you want to know how this story ended, subscribe to the channel so you do not miss any detail of what is coming. It was 9 in the morning. I had been up since 6 to prepare the perfect breakfast. Homemade pancakes with maple syrup, scrambled eggs with cheddar cheese, freshly brewed coffee. With cinnamon and pastries I bought at Old Man Charlie's Bakery, the one 4 blocks away that opens when the sky is still dark. I put on my apron, the one with orange flowers that Henry gave me 15 years ago, and I moved every pot with care. Valerie had let me know the night before that she was bringing her friends over. Mom Stella, she said to me with that voice she uses when she needs something. The girls are coming over for breakfast tomorrow. Make something nice, okay? Mom Stella, that is what she calls me. Never just Stella, never mother-in-law with affection. Always that Mom Stella that sounds like an obligation, like a formality, like something that has to be endured. But I prepared breakfast, as I always do, with love. Because that house, those walls, that kitchen where the sun comes in through the morning window and paints everything gold are my whole life. 40 years of marriage lived between those white tiles. 40 years of laughter, of tears, of meals shared with my Henry. 3 years without him. 3 years since his heart decided it was enough. And 2 years sharing my home with David, my only son, and with her, Valerie. The friends arrived at 8:30. 4 women between 30 and 35 years old dressed in expensive sportswear carrying brand name bags that I barely recognize. They came in laughing, talking about yoga, about trips, about new restaurants. "Smells good," said one of them, the one with brown hair and blonde highlights. "It is the mother-in-law," Valerie replied, and something in her tone made my stomach tighten. "She cooks all the time. It is the only thing she knows how to do." I smiled. I served the plates. I filled the coffee cups. I moved through my own kitchen like a shadow, invisible, useful only for putting things on and taking things off the table. They ate. They criticized a neighbor. They talked about a new gym. They complained about their husbands, about their jobs, about how hard it is to get good help. And then it happened. I was in the kitchen washing the first few pots when I heard Valerie's voice rise above the others, clear, strong, without caring if I could hear her. That old woman only knows how to make bad food. Seriously, I do not know how I put up with her. Silence. A second of silence where the world stopped, and then the laughter. All her friends laughing, laughing at me, laughing at my breakfast, laughing at my existence. My hands trembled under the soapy water. I felt something break inside my chest, something that had been cracking for months, but until that moment had resisted. I dried my hands. I took a deep breath, and I walked out of the kitchen. They all looked at me when I entered the dining room. Valerie had that smile on her lips, that smile that said, "Yes, I talked about you, and what are you going to do about it?" I said nothing. I just smiled. That smile I have perfected during 2 years of living as a guest in my own house. That smile that hides tears, rage, disappointment. I collected the empty cups one by one. I listened to how they kept talking, how Valerie had already moved on to another topic as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't just ripped out a piece of my soul. I walked to my room, the only one that is still mine in this 2-story house that I built with the sweat of my brow and the love of my husband. I closed the door behind me, and then only then did I stop smiling. I sat on the edge of my bed, that bed where Henry and I slept for decades, and I looked out the window. The jacaranda trees were blooming on the street, purple, beautiful, indifferent to my pain. I touched the pearl necklace I always wear. Henry gave it to me on our 35th anniversary. For the woman who built this home with me, he told me that night with shining eyes. What had I really built? A house where they now called me that old woman? A home where my own daughter-in-law humiliated me in front of strangers? I did not cry. I had no tears left for these things. But something changed in that moment, something deep, something definitive. I opened my nightstand drawer and took out my old cell phone. I looked for a number I hadn't dialed in months. Mr. Arnold, the lawyer who had handled all of Henry's papers. The man who had been at our weddings, baptisms, birthdays family, even though he didn't carry our blood. I dialed. I waited. Stella. His voice sounded surprised. What happened? Arnold, I said, and my voice came out firmer than I expected. I need you to come see me today. It is urgent. Are you okay? No, I replied, looking at the closed door of my room. But I am going to be. I hung up, put the phone away, and sat there, listening to the laughter still coming from the dining room. 2 hours later, while Valerie was saying goodbye to her friends at the door, a truck pulled up in front of my house. It was not the truck she expected. And her face, when she saw it, that face was worth every second of humiliation I had endured. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you everything from the beginning. How did I get to that moment? How a 68-year-old widow, apparently defeated, silently planned the most important move of her life. Because what Valerie didn't know was something very simple. I built that house. I have the deed, and I was about to remind everyone who Stella Ramirez really was. To understand what happened that Tuesday, you need to know the history of this house, because it is not just a property. It is not just walls and roofs. This house is the living testimony of 40 years of sacrifice, of love, of dreams achieved through hard work. I met Henry when I was 23. He was a mechanic at a downtown shop, and I sold sandwiches on the corner of Main Street. We met on a rainy day when he offered to share his umbrella with me. Your sandwiches are going to get wet, he told me with that crooked smile that would make me fall in love 1,000 times. We got married 6 months later in a simple ceremony. We rented a room in a working-class neighborhood. We shared the bathroom with 3 other families. We cooked on an electric hot plate. But we were happy. My God, we were so happy. Someday Henry would tell me while we counted coins before sleeping we are going to have our own house with a garden with space for our children to run. And we worked for that dream like crazy. Henry started doing double shifts at the shop. I kept selling sandwiches, but I also started sewing clothes on commission. I worked until dawn with my old Singer machine, the one that had been my mother's. My fingers bled sometimes from sewing so much. But every dollar I earned went straight into the coffee tin, where we kept our savings. It took us 12 years. 12 years of sacrifices, of giving things up, of not going to the movies, of not buying new clothes, of saving every penny as if it were gold. And then in 1983, we bought this lot in Greenwood Valley. It was smaller back then, just 2,000 square feet, but it was ours. The day we signed the deed, Henry carried me in his arms, even though I protested. You are crazy, the neighbors are going to see us, I told him. He just laughed. Let them see us. I want the whole world to know that this woman and I are going to build something big here. We built the house ourselves. Well, Henry built it with the help of 2 friends who were masons. I made food for everyone, carried bricks, mixed cement. I was 29 years old and had more strength than I imagined. David's pregnancy barely showed, yet even though he had been in my womb for 4 months, the house started as a single floor, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, kitchen, and living room block walls, painted white polished cement floor, aluminum windows. We got on sale, nothing fancy, but it was a palace to us. David was born in January of 1984. I brought him to this house when he was 3 days old, wrapped in the blue blanket my mom knitted for him. I remember Henry painted one of the walls of his room with glow-in-the-dark stars. So he is never afraid of the dark, he told me. Years passed. Henry opened his own shop. I stopped selling sandwiches and dedicated myself to raising David, although I kept sewing at night. Little by little, we improved the house. We changed the floor to tile. We expanded the kitchen. We built the second floor when David turned 10. This house saw everything. It saw David take his first steps in the living room. It saw his birthday parties with piñatas in the garden. It saw his late nights as a college student. It saw how he fell in love with Valerie when he brought her to dinner for the first time 7 years ago. "Mom," he told me that night after she left, "I think she is the one." I smiled and hugged him. If you love her son, I am happy. But something in Valerie's eyes that first night unsettled me. The way she looked at the house, as if appraising it, as if calculating its value. But I kept my doubts to myself. A mother should not interfere. Or so I thought then. Henry died 3 years ago. A massive heart attack while working at the shop. He didn't even have time to say goodbye. A mechanic who had worked with him came to give me the news. Mrs. Stella, Mr. Henry, is gone. The world stopped that day. 40 years of marriage ended in a blink. The funeral was crowded. Henry was loved in the neighborhood. But when everyone left, I remained alone in this huge house. Empty, full of memories that hurt like needles. David came to visit me every day for the first month. "Mom, you can't stay here alone." He'd already been married to Valerie for 2 years. They lived in a rented apartment downtown. "I am fine, son," I told him, although inside I was falling apart. It was Valerie who suggested the idea. "Mom, Stella, why don't we come live with you? That way we keep you company and you help us save to buy our own house eventually." Eventually. That word should have alerted me. "It is temporary," Mom David insisted, "just until we save for the down payment on a condo." I accepted because the house felt too big without Henry, because the silence was driving me crazy, because I wanted to believe that family was the most important thing. They moved in 2 months after the funeral. They brought their things in a small truck. "Do not worry, Mom. We are not going to change anything David promised." But Valerie had other plans. At first, they were small changes. She moved the living room furniture. For better flow, Mom Stella. She took down the floral curtains I had sewn and put up minimalist gray ones. It is more modern, don't you think? Then came the big changes. The wedding portrait of Henry and me that hung in the main living room disappeared. "I put it in your room so you can take better care of it," she told me. The family photos were replaced by abstract paintings she bought. The tablecloth hand-embroidered by my grandmother, the one we used for Christmas and birthdays, ended up in a box in the storage room. It is very old, Mom Stella. It looks bad. The kitchen, my kitchen, became my only refuge. Valerie didn't go in there much. I kept cooking for the 3 of us, cleaning, washing. I became the housekeeper of the home I had built myself. It is just temporary. David reminded me when I tried timidly to mention something, as soon as we save up. But a year passed, 2 years, and they were still there. And I was still useful only for serving cooking cleaning, until that Tuesday morning when I heard those words. That old woman only knows how to make bad food. And something inside me, something that had been asleep since Henry's death, finally woke up. This house was now worth more than $850,000. I know because a real estate agent knocked on my door 6 months ago offering to buy it. The area had increased in value. We were an oasis in the middle of urban development. $850,000, 40 years of sweat. My inheritance, my assets, my dignity turned into walls and windows, and I was about to defend it. What I haven't told you yet is how the temporary became permanent, how little by little I lost spaces in my own house until I felt like an intruder paying rent with housework. The first 6 months were tolerable. Valerie worked at a marketing firm. She left early and came back late. David continued with his job at a systems company. I had my routines. I cleaned in the mornings, cooked, watched my soap operas in the afternoon, watered the plants in the garden Henry had planted. But after the first year, something changed. Valerie quit her job. "I am exhausted, Mom Stella. I need a break to find myself." She told David as if it were the most natural thing in the world, and my son, always so accommodating with her, simply nodded. "It is okay, honey. I can support the expenses for a while." That for a while turned into a year and a half. And with Valerie at home all day, things got worse quickly. She began to redecorate everything. Every week she arrived with bags from expensive stores, new cushions, modern lamps, mirrors with gold frames. "This house needs updating, Mom Stella. It looks like we live in the 80s. I pressed my lips together and said nothing, because those 80s furniture I had bought with my money. That wooden living room set she found outdated. Henry and I paid for in installments over 2 years. One day I came back from grocery shopping and found that the mahogany bookshelf in the study, the one Henry built with his own hands, had disappeared. In its place was a minimalist white desk. "Where is Henry's bookshelf?" I asked, feeling my throat close up. "Oh, Mom Stella, it was full of termites. I asked some guys to take it away. It was no good anymore." Valerie didn't even look up from her cell phone as she answered me. "But that bookshelf," I couldn't finish the sentence. That bookshelf held Henry's mechanics books, his technical magazines, the photographs from when he opened his shop. "I already bought you a new one, more functional." She pointed to a melamine shelf in the corner. That night I cried in my room. I cried for that bookshelf for Henry, for feeling so small in my own house. Valerie's friends started coming over more often, 2-3 times a week. They settled in the living room that had been my pride with their designer bags thrown on the sofa, their heels on the coffee table. I served them coffee, snacks, whatever they asked for. I had become the unpaid employee. "Mom Stella, can you make us something to eat?" It was always the same request, not a question, an order disguised as courtesy, and I prepared. Sandwiches, salads, snacks, food they would then criticize amidst laughter. "Oh, it is too greasy. I do not eat carbs anymore. Do you have anything lighter?" But the worst was not that. The worst was seeing them look at my house with evaluating eyes, listening to their comments when they thought I wasn't listening. "This area is super expensive now. Your mother-in-law has a gold mine here, and she lives alone? What a waste of space. When it is yours, you can renovate it completely and resell it or rent it out by parts. When it is yours." Those words were burned into my brain like a hot iron. One afternoon, while cleaning the study that Valerie now called her office, I found papers on the desk. I did not want to snoop. Really, I didn't. But my name was there on an official document. It was a property history search. My name. The address of this house, tax values, market prices, property transfer procedures. My hands shook holding those papers. Why was Valerie investigating this? Why did she need to know how much my house was worth? I put everything back exactly as it was. I said nothing. But that night I couldn't sleep. I lay staring at the ceiling, listening to David and Valerie snoring in the room that had been mine and Henry's for decades. The changes continued. My bedroom, the only one I had kept intact, started to be invaded too. Valerie needed space for her new clothes. "Mom Stella, can I use half of your closet? Ours is already full." How do you say no when it is your daughter-in-law? When your son looks at you with those eyes asking you to be understanding? So I accepted, and my clothes ended up compressed in a corner, while Valerie's dresses occupied the places where Henry's shirts used to hang, the ones I still kept because they smelled like him. The plants in the garden, the ones Henry watered every afternoon, religiously began to die. Valerie hired a gardener who tore out the rose bushes to put in synthetic grass. It is more practical, Mom Stella. It does not need maintenance. I had taken care of those rose bushes for 20 years. Henry pruned them every spring. We had red, yellow, white roses. The garden smelled of glory in May. Now it was an expanse of green plastic that looked like a golf course. I stopped recognizing my house. The smells were different. The sounds were different. The spaces that used to fill me with peace now suffocated me. And David? My son saw nothing, or he didn't want to see. Mom Valerie just wants to modernize a little. Do not take it personally. That is what he told me when I finally gathered the courage to mention my discomfort to him. Son, this is my house. It is your house, Mom, but it is also our home now. We have to all get along. As if I wasn't doing everything possible to disappear, to not bother, to be invisible. Then came the day I found something that froze my blood. It was a Thursday. Valerie had gone out with her friends. I was cleaning the desk in her office. Yes, now I cleaned her office, when a folder fell to the floor, the papers scattered, and there, in black ink and legal lettering, it was, a power of attorney, signed by David, granting himself powers to administer real estate assets of Stella Ramirez, widow of Cordero. The date, 4 months ago. My son had signed a document giving himself power over my properties. When? How? Why hadn't he consulted me? My legs wouldn't support me. I sat on the floor of that office surrounded by papers that spoke of transfers, valuations, notary procedures, and then I saw another document, printed from an email, Valerie writing to someone named Patricia. The old woman won't last much longer. She is 68 and looks worn out. When she is gone, this house will be all ours. I already got David to sign the power of attorney. Now it is just a matter of waiting for the right moment to have her sign the transfer. He does whatever I ask. I read that message 5 times, 10 times, until the words became blurry from tears. It was not paranoia. It was not my imagination. They were really planning to take my house. They were really waiting for me to die. Or worse, for me to sign papers I wouldn't even understand. I put everything back exactly as it was. I took photos with my old cell phone, my wrinkled hands shaking so much that the first ones came out blurry, but I insisted until they were clear. I walked out of that office feeling as if I had been hollowed out inside, as if every organ had been removed and only a shell remained. That night I made dinner as always. I set the table as always. I smiled as always. But inside, something had changed definitively. I was no longer the compliant mother-in-law. I was no longer the naive mother. I was a woman who had just discovered a betrayal so deep it cut to the bone. And betrayals, I learned that night, have a particular way of waking up those we thought were asleep. After finding those documents, something broke inside me that couldn't be fixed. It was not a dramatic break. I did not scream. I did not confront anyone. It was something quieter and more devastating. I stopped recognizing myself in the mirror. I spent the next few days on a kind of autopilot. I got up, cooked, cleaned, smiled, but it was as if I were watching myself from the outside, as if I were an actress playing the role of Stella, the helpful mother-in-law, while the real Stella bled out inside. The nights were worse. I stayed awake watching the shadows on the ceiling, touching the pearl necklace Henry gave me on our 35th anniversary. For the woman who built this home with me, he had told me that night with moist eyes, "So you never forget that everything we have is because of you, because of us." And now that home was being snatched away from me, piece by piece, day after day. I started observing everything with new eyes. Things I ignored before now screamed their meaning at me. The looks Valerie shot David when I spoke. Those looks that said, "Let her be, you know how she is." The way she touched the walls, the furniture, as if they were already hers, as if she were measuring what would stay and what would end up in the trash when I was gone. A Tuesday afternoon, 2 weeks after the breakfast incident, I decided to check further. I'm not proud to say it, but I needed to know. I needed to confirm I wasn't going crazy, that my suspicions had grounds. Valerie had gone to the beauty salon. David was at work. The house was silent except for the ticking of the wall clock, the one Henry repaired 3 times because I didn't want to get rid of it. I entered the office with my heart pounding against my ribs. My hands shook as I opened the desk drawers. Folders, receipts, invoices for things I hadn't authorized or seen. A receipt from a jewelry store, $5,000. A white gold bracelet, another from a spa, $2,000. Complete facial rejuvenation package. Receipts from expensive restaurants. Trips to Cabo I didn't know they had taken. Everything charged to a credit card that I discovered on another paper was linked to an account where David deposited money monthly for household expenses. But those were not household expenses. They were Valerie's whims. I kept looking, and then I found something that knocked the wind out of me. A quote from a nursing home. Golden Spring Residence for Seniors. Private room, $6,000 a month. full package with medical care, $8,000, and a handwritten note in Valerie's handwriting. Option 1, tell her it is for her health. Option 2, wait for her to get more frail and present it as a medical necessity. My legs failed me. I let myself fall into the desk chair, the one that had replaced Henry's bookshelf, and tears began to roll uncontrollably. They did not just want my house, they wanted to get me out of it. Lock me in a place where they could forget about me while they enjoyed the assets Henry and I built over 40 years. How long had they been planning this? Since when was my son, my own son, part of this conspiracy? I took more photos. Every document, every receipt, every paper that proved what they were doing. My fingers no longer trembled. The sadness was transforming into something different, something colder, more calculating. I found more things. Bank statements showing large withdrawals. $3,000 here, $4,000 there. Money that was supposedly for house repairs, but never materialized in any visible improvement. And then, in the back of the bottom drawer, wrapped in a plastic bag, I found something that broke my heart into pieces. Henry's gold pocket watch, the one his father had given him when he turned 21, the one he guarded like a treasure, and that I had searched for desperately after his death. I took it out with trembling hands. It was dusty, abandoned, as if it were worth nothing. But next to it was a paper, a receipt from a pawn shop. They had pawned it for $2,500, and they had never told me. I pressed the watch against my chest and finally allowed myself to weep. I wept for Henry, for this watch that was his family history, for the house we built together, for the son I no longer recognized, for the woman I had become, invisible, used disposable. I cried until I had no tears left, and when my eyes dried, something else emerged in their place. Fury. Not the explosive fury that screams and throws things, the cold fury that thinks, that plans, that waits for the exact moment to act. I wiped my face. I took the watch and put it in my apron pocket. I arranged the whole desk exactly as it was. I closed the drawers. I turned off the light. And when Valerie returned that afternoon with freshly styled hair and red painted nails, I was in the kitchen making dinner, smiling, servile, apparently defeated. "Smells good, Mom Stella," she said, checking her cell phone without even looking at me. "They are your favorites," I replied with a sweet voice. "Chicken pot pie." She felt distracted and went to her room. I kept cooking, but inside my head, the pieces of a plan began to fall into place. Because if I had learned anything in 68 years of life, it was this. Patience is a weapon. Silence is a strategy. And underestimation is the biggest mistake anyone can make. They had underestimated me. They had treated me like a stupid old woman who understood nothing, who would sign whatever was put in front of her, who would go meekly to a nursing home when suggested for her own good. That night, after everyone went to sleep, I took out my cell phone. I dialed Mr. Arnold's number again. "Stella, what happened? You left me worried the other day." "Arnold," I said quietly, sitting on my bed with Henry's watch in my hands, "I need to know exactly what rights I have over this property, and I need to know what validity a power of attorney has that my son signed without my consent." There was silence on the other end. Then his voice sounded more serious. "Tell me everything, from the beginning." And I told him, everything. The documents, the plans, the nursing home, the pawned watch, the invoices, the humiliations, every detail while my voice remained steady, even though my heart ached. "Stella," he said finally, "that house is solely in your name. Henry was very clear in his will. And that power of attorney, if it was obtained under deception or without explaining the full scope to you, can be challenged. What can I do? What do you want to do?" I looked around my room, the only one that still kept some of my essence. The furniture Henry and I bought. The photos Valerie hadn't been able to remove yet. The familiar smell of my perfume mixed with memories. "I want my house back," I said. "I want my dignity back. I want my son to see what he is allowed to happen, and I want Valerie to learn that I am not the stupid old woman she thinks I am." Mr. Arnold stayed silent for a moment. Then he said, "Then we need to act with intelligence. Do you have evidence of everything you told me? Photos, documents, receipts, everything. Good. Tomorrow at 2 in the afternoon, when you know they are out, I am coming to your house with a notary. We are going to review everything, and we are going to prepare a solid legal plan." I hung up feeling different lighter, as if after months of carrying the world on my shoulders, finally someone else was sharing the weight. That night, I slept for the first time in weeks, and I dreamed of Henry. We were in the garden when the rose bushes were still blooming. He held my hand and told me, "You were never weak, Stella. You were just waiting for the right moment." I woke up with the sunrise, and I knew that moment had arrived. Mr. Arnold arrived exactly at 2 in the afternoon the next day. I saw him from my bedroom window, a 72-year-old man, gray-haired with his worn leather briefcase that I had known for 30 years. He was accompanied by a young woman with glasses and a gray tailored suit, and the notary. Valerie had gone out to eat with her friends. David was at work until 7. I had planned every detail of this meeting like I had never planned anything in my life. I opened the door before they rang the bell. Stella. Mr. Arnold hugged me with that fatherly affection he had always given me. "Are you okay?" "Now I am," I replied, and it was true. For the first time in months, I felt I had something resembling control. The notary introduced herself as Monica Harris. She was about 40 years old and had a sharp gaze that evaluated everything. I liked her immediately. There was no pity in her eyes, only professionalism. I sat them in the living room, my living room, even though I didn't recognize it with all of Valerie's changes, and offered them coffee. Mr. Arnold declined with a wave of his hand. "Later, Stella, let's talk first." I took out my cell phone and showed them all the photos I had taken, the documents about the property, the power of attorney signed by David, the bank statements with the unexplained withdrawals, the nursing home quote, with Valerie's handwritten notes, the receipt for the pawned watch. Monica was taking notes on a tablet. Her expression hardened as she reviewed each image. "Do you have the physical documents?" she asked without looking up. "They are in the study. I can bring them. Do it, please." I went for the papers, my heart beating hard. Every step I took through this house felt different. I was no longer walking like the tolerated mother-in-law. I walked like the owner I had always been. When I returned with the full folder, Mr. Arnold had already taken other documents out of his briefcase. "Stella, before Henry died, he came to see me. You know, I handled all his legal affairs for decades." He extended a manila envelope sealed with a notary stamp. He left me this with specific instructions. "If you ever feel Stella is in an irregular situation, especially related to the house, open it." I stared at that envelope as if it were a message from the beyond, because that was exactly what it was. Henry knew. Henry was a very observant man. He didn't know specifically what might happen, but he knew human nature, and he knew the value of what you built together. Mr. Arnold opened the envelope carefully. This is a notarized declaration he made 3 months before dying. It clearly states that this property must remain solely in your name, that any attempt at transfer, sale, or modification of deeds must have your full and conscious authorization, preferably with my legal advice present. Tears began to roll down my cheeks. Henry had tried to protect me even after death. Monica read the document and nodded. "This is solid, very solid. And this power of attorney your son signed," she lifted the paper with disdain. "It is questionable, at best. It says it is for managing assets. But if you never specifically authorized that administration, if the full scope wasn't explained to you, and if there is evidence it is being used against your interests, we can annul it." "How long would it take?" I asked, wiping my tears with the back of my hand. "With the documentation you have and the backing of your husband's document, we can do it in 72 hours. But Stella..." Monica leaned forward. I need you to understand something. Once we start this, there is no going back. Your daughter-in-law will see it as a declaration of war, possibly your son too. It is already a war, I replied with a steady voice. Only I just realized I am in it. Mr. Arnold took my hand. Henry made me promise something else. He told me, if the moment comes when Stella needs to regain her strength, remind her who she is. Remind her that that house is not just walls. It is her history, her dignity, and no one has the right to take it from her. His eyes shone with held-back tears. You have been a fool, Stella, but a fool with deeds in your name. And that changes everything. Those words hit me like cold water. He was right. I had been a fool for allowing myself to be treated like that, a fool for confusing a mother's love with the obligation to endure everything, a fool for believing that being good meant being invisible. What options do I have? I asked, straightening in my seat. Monica opened a notebook. Option 1, direct legal confrontation. We file an eviction lawsuit for unlawful detainer annul the power of attorney and get them out of the property. It is the fastest, but also the most aggressive. Option 2, you give them an ultimatum. You show them all this evidence, explain that you know their plans, and give them a deadline to vacate voluntarily, less legally traumatic, but depends on their cooperation. And if they don't cooperate, then we go back to option 1 anyway, but at least you gave them a chance. I thought about David, my son, the boy I raised, the man who had signed papers behind my back, but who maybe didn't really understand what he was allowing. I want them to see what they have done, I said slowly. I want the moment of truth to be impossible to ignore, so they can't hide behind excuses or justifications. Mr. Arnold smiled. It was a sad but proud smile. Then let's do this right. Let's document everything legally. Let's prepare the eviction order. And when you are ready, when the precise moment arrives, we act. We spent the next 2 hours going over every detail. Monica photographed all the original documents. We made an inventory of everything Valerie had sold or pawned without my authorization. We calculated the damages. More than $85,000 in antiques, jewelry, and valuables that had disappeared from my house. You can file criminal charges for this, Monica said. Misappropriation, dispossession fraud. I do not want to destroy my daughter-in-law, I replied. I just want what is mine back. I want her to return what she stole, and I want her out of my house. And your son? That question hurt more than all the humiliations combined. David needs to see the truth. He needs to wake up, and if that means distancing him temporarily from me, so be it. Because a son who allows his mother to be treated like this is not the son I raised. Mr. Arnold squeezed my hand. Henry would be proud of you right now. When they left, it was almost 5 p.m. I sat in the living room looking at the walls that no longer held the photos of my life. But something had changed. I no longer felt small in this space. I no longer felt like the intruder. Valerie returned at 6, loaded with shopping bags. She came in laughing at something she had seen on her cell phone. Hi, Mom, Stella. Is dinner ready? Almost, I replied with a smile. Today, I made your favorite, chicken with mole sauce. Perfect. I am hungry. She went to her room without even looking at me. I went back to the kitchen. But as I stirred the sauce, I couldn't stop smiling, because now I had something Valerie didn't know I had. I had a plan, I had legal backing, I had evidence, and I had, for the first time in years, the absolute certainty that I was not alone in this. That night, as I served dinner, while Valerie and David ate and talked without paying attention to me, I watched them with different eyes. I watched them like someone who knows a secret, like someone holding cards up their sleeve, like someone about to change the game completely. Mom, the chicken is delicious, David said with his mouth full. Thanks, son, I replied softly. I made it with a lot of love, like everything I do in this house. Valerie didn't even look up from her phone. But it didn't matter, because very soon she was going to have to look at me. She was going to have to really see me. And that day, that coming day I was carefully preparing, was going to be unforgettable. I went to sleep that night with Henry's watch on my nightstand. I had cleaned it carefully, removing the dust of neglect. It shone now under the lamplight. "Not long now, love," I whispered, touching the glass of the watch. "Not long now until I recover what is ours." And for the first time in 3 years, I felt Henry listening to me, approving being there, guiding me toward the moment I would finally stand up and say enough. The next few days, I became someone I never thought I would be, a detective in my own house. But not a clumsy and obvious detective. No. I became careful, meticulous, invisible in a completely new way. Now my invisibility was my weapon. I began to document everything, every movement, every expense, every visitor. I had a small notebook hidden in my apron pocket where I wrote down times, conversations, details I would have ignored before. Mr. Arnold had told me, "The more evidence we have, the stronger the case will be. We cannot leave room for doubt." So I left none. I discovered Valerie had been selling things online for months. I found the profile she used on a sales app. I found it by accident when she left her laptop open one day, and I went to clean the living room. Everything was there. Photos of my German porcelain dinnerware I had inherited from my mother. Antique, excellent condition. $1,500. Sold 3 months ago. Bought by a lady in the hills who collects European porcelain. The complete sterling silver flatware set Henry and I received as a wedding gift. Silver 925. Service for 12. $3,000. Sold 5 months ago. An antique carved wooden display cabinet that had belonged to Henry's grandmother. Colonial furniture. Unique piece. $5,000. Sold 7 months ago. Every photo I saw was a stab wound. Every price was a betrayal. But I remained calm. I took screenshots of everything. Every post. Every conversation with buyers. Every bank transfer. My hands shook, but I didn't stop until I had everything documented. I saved everything in a folder in my email. Mr. Arnold had taught me how to do it. Create a new account only you know. Save everything there. It is your backup. I followed the old posts. I found more things. A wall clock that had belonged to my mother-in-law, bronze candlesticks, a collection of old coins Henry had collected for years, all sold, all turned into money that went into Valerie's accounts. I did the math. In total, she had sold over $15,000 worth of items. $15,000 of my family history turned into designer bags, trips, and beauty treatments. But that was not all. One afternoon while Valerie was at the gym, I checked her bank statements she kept in a folder in the study. I am not proud of having done it, but I needed to know the whole truth. I found transfers that froze my blood. Large withdrawals from the joint account she and David supposedly had for household expenses. $3,000. Kitchen remodeling. But the kitchen remained exactly the same as always. $4,000. Waterproofing repair. But the roof had never had problems. $6,000. Electrical wiring change. But the cables and outlets were the same as always. Ghost work after ghost work. Money that was supposedly to improve the house, but never materialized in any real improvement. Where had all that money gone? I kept investigating, and I found the answer in an envelope hidden behind some decorative books Valerie had put on the shelf. Quotes for condos, in the West End, in downtown, in the hills. Luxury condos with prices between $400,000 and $600,000. And a note in Valerie's handwriting. When we have the house free, we sell it for $850,000. We pay off one of these condos and have money left to invest. David agrees. Just need to convince the old woman to go to the nursing home for her own good. I had to sit down. My legs wouldn't support me. It was not just that they wanted my house. They already planned exactly what they would do with the money from my life, with my assets, with everything Henry and I worked for during 40 years. And David agreed. My son, my only son. the boy born in this house, who grew up between these walls, who promised at his father's funeral he would always take care of me. I photographed everything, every quote, every note, every paper that proved their intentions. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on my bed with Henry's watch in my hands, crying in silence. Not for me, for him, because he had worked until the last day of his life to ensure me a dignified future, and his own son was trying to snatch it away. But the tears dried when I heard something. It was almost 2 a.m. Voices in the hallway. Valerie and David talking in whispers. But the walls of this house are thin. I knew them. I knew exactly where sounds were amplified. I approached my bedroom door without making noise. "It won't last much longer," Valerie was saying. "Look at her hands, how they shake." And the other day she got confused about the street when she went to the market. "Mom is fine, Valerie. She is just getting old." Exactly, she is getting old, and this house is too big for her. What if she falls? If she has an accident? Would it be our legal responsibility? I do not know. I feel bad talking about this. David, do not be naive. We are doing this for her too. In the nursing home, she would be better cared for. And we could start our own life without having to worry all the time. And if she says no, then we use the power of attorney. You are the one who manages her assets now. You can make decisions for her well-being. Mr. Jack confirmed it to me. Mr. Jack? I didn't even know who that was. Probably some corrupt lawyer who had given them advice on how to legally dispossess me. It still seems wrong to me. David's voice sounded weak, doubtful. Your mom had her life. She built her house, raised her son. Now it is her turn to rest, and it is our turn to live. Do not be selfish, honey. Think about our future, about the children we are going to have. Do you want to raise them in a house that smells of old age and nostalgia? There was silence. I waited, holding my breath, praying my son would say something, defend me, set a limit. Okay, he said finally, but do it carefully. I do not want her to suffer. She is not going to suffer. She is going to be in a nice place with people her age. It is best for everyone. I heard them walk back to their room. The door closed. I stood there in the dark, trembling from head to toe, not from fear, from a fury so deep it surprised me. I went back to my bed. I took out my cell phone, and I wrote a message to Mr. Arnold even though it was dawn. I need us to speed up the process. I can't wait any longer. I need this to end soon. The answer came in 5 minutes. He wasn't sleeping either. Understood. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. in my office. Bring all the evidence. We are going to prepare the final strategy. I put the phone away. I looked at the ceiling. And I made a decision. I was no longer going to be the victim. I was no longer going to be the tolerant mother-in-law who puts up with everything to keep the peace. I was no longer going to allow them to treat my life as if it were an obstacle in their path to comfort. I was going to fight. With everything. With intelligence. With the legal tools I had. With the strength I had forgotten I possessed. The next day, I left the house at 9 a.m. I told them I was going to the doctor. Valerie barely looked up from her cell phone. David had already gone to work. Mr. Arnold's office was downtown in an old building near the courthouse. I climbed the stairs slowly. My knees weren't what they used to be, but with determination. Mr. Arnold and Monica were waiting for me. Everything was spread out on the desk. Documents, photos, evidence. Stella Monica said with a smile that reassured me, "You have a solid case. Very solid. Misappropriation, dispossession fraud. If you wanted, you could take this to criminal court. I do not want to ruin anyone's life." I replied, "I just want mine back, and I want them to pay for what they took." "Then let's do this." Mr. Arnold unfolded some official documents. Eviction order for unlawful detainer. Annulment of power of attorney for vice of consent. and civil lawsuit for assets sold without authorization, total to restore. $45,000 considering the sold items plus the ghost expenses. How long do they have to vacate? 72 hours from notification. And when do we notify them? Mr. Arnold looked at me intently. When do you want to do it? I thought about that morning at breakfast, the laughter of Valerie's friends, the words that had destroyed me. That old woman only knows how to make bad food. I thought about the plans I had heard last night about the nursing home, about their dreams of selling my house and starting their own life. I want it to be public, I said slowly. I want there to be witnesses. I want it to be impossible to deny or hide. Monica smiled. What do you have in mind? And then I told them my plan, a plan that had been forming in my head for days, a plan that required perfect timing and absolute courage. When I finished explaining, Mr. Arnold whistled softly. You are sharper than I thought, Stella. 40 years of marriage to a smart mechanic taught me something. Timing is everything. An engine works because every piece moves at the exact moment. This will be the same. I signed all the necessary documents. Monica prepared the orders. Mr. Arnold coordinated with the notary and the judicial police in case backup was needed. 1 week, he said finally. In exactly 1 week, we execute. 1 week, I repeated, feeling something like hope blooming in my chest for the first time in months. I returned home at 1 in the afternoon. Valerie was in the living room with 2 of her friends. They saw me come in. How did it go at the doctor, Mom Stella? She asked with that fake voice of concern. Fine, I replied with a smile. He told me I am strong as an oak, that I am going to live many more years. I saw how her smile tightened a little, how her eyes hardened. That is good, she said finally. That is good. But it was not good, not for her, and I knew it. I went to the kitchen to make coffee for her guests, and as I poured the water, I couldn't help but smile because the clock was ticking. And when the moment arrived, when everything was ready, it was going to be glorious. The week went by in slow motion and at lightning speed at the same time. Every day I cooked, cleaned, and smiled was 1 day less until the moment of truth. Every night I heard Valerie and David's whispered plans was fuel for my determination. Mr. Arnold called me daily. Are you sure about this, Stella? We can still do it privately, less dramatic. I am sure I answered every time. I need them to see. I need everyone to see. Wednesday afternoon, 5 days after our meeting, I told Valerie in the sweetest voice I could manage. Valerie, on Saturday, I would like to make a special breakfast for you and your friends as an apology for being a burden sometimes. She looked up from her cell phone surprised. Then appeared that smile of hers, the one she used when she thought she had won something. Really, Mom Stella? It is not necessary. I insist I want to do it. You always tell me my food isn't good, so I want to try to improve, make something special. Can you invite the same friends from the other day? I saw the calculation in her eyes, the opportunity to humiliate me again in front of her social circle, to reaffirm her position as the lady of the house, while I was just the obsolete mother-in-law. Okay, she said finally, I will invite them. What time? At 9 in the morning, and please tell them to come. It is important to me. Sure, what a nice gesture. Her tone was condescending, like someone speaking to a child trying to do something cute but pathetic. That night I called Mr. Arnold. Saturday 9 in the morning. Everything ready. Everything ready, he confirmed. The notary will be there at 11. The eviction order is signed. The judicial officers will be on standby and the moving truck will arrive at 11:15. Perfect. Stella, how do you feel? I stayed silent for a moment, touching Henry's pearl necklace. I feel alive, Arnold. For the first time in 3 years, I feel completely alive. On Friday, I bought everything for the breakfast. I spent $300 from my own pension. I did not ask David for money. I wanted every ingredient to be mine. I bought the freshest berries from the market. the best bacon artisanal cheese pastries from Old Man Charlie's Bakery, organic coffee. I was going to cook like never before, because this was not going to be just a breakfast. It was going to be a statement. Saturday, I got up at 5 in the morning. I took a long bath. I put on my best clothes, a wine-colored cotton dress with embroidered flowers that Henry had bought me years ago for an anniversary. I applied my makeup carefully. I put on the pearl necklace and matching earrings. I looked at myself in the mirror, and for the first time in months, I recognized the woman looking back at me. It was not the defeated mother-in-law. It was Stella Ramirez, the woman who built a home, the woman who raised a son, the woman who survived the loss of the love of her life and was still standing. At 6, I started cooking. Gourmet pancakes made from scratch, scrambled eggs with herbs and cream cheese, crispy bacon, hash browns perfectly golden, freshly baked muffins arranged on a wicker tray, coffee brewing slowly with cinnamon, hot chocolate whipped by hand until the foam was perfect. I set the table with the tablecloth I had rescued from the storage room, the one embroidered by my grandmother with colorful threads that told stories of flowers and birds. I took out the good china, what was left of it, what Valerie hadn't sold yet. I put fresh flowers in the center, red and white carnations. The table looked beautiful, dignified, like the Sunday breakfasts when Henry was alive, and this house was a real home. Valerie came down at 8:30. She stood at the entrance of the dining room, looking at everything with genuine surprise. "Wow, Mom Stella, you outdid yourself. I wanted to do something special," I replied with a calm smile. "For you, for your friends. It looks good." She couldn't say more. To admit it was beautiful would be to admit that I had value, and she wasn't ready for that. The friends started arriving at 9 o'clock sharp, the same 4 from the previous breakfast. Andrea, the one with blonde highlights, Sarah with the straight black hair, Linda the youngest, and Lucy, who always wore designer glasses. "Smells incredible," Andrea said upon entering. I received them with a smile. I seated them. I served them coffee chocolate. I offered them hot muffins that steamed when opened. They started eating, and despite their prejudices, despite everything they had to admit it. "This is delicious," Sarah said, tasting the eggs. "These muffins are spectacular," Linda added. Valerie ate in silence, uncomfortable, because her narrative that I only knew how to make bad food was crumbling in front of her friends. I moved among them like a perfect hostess, servile, attentive, smiling. I let them talk. I listened to their conversations about yoga, about vacations, about the new restaurant that had opened downtown. And then, when they were on their second coffee, Valerie relaxed. She thought this was really what it seemed, me submitting, me accepting my place, me preparing the best food to earn her approval. "Well," Valerie said, reclining in her chair, "maybe my mother-in-law does know how to cook when she tries." The friends laughed uncomfortably, although still she continued, emboldened by the laughter. "It is a lot of work having her here." "Right, girls. Mothers-in-law are complicated." "Oh yes," Andrea said, "mine is a lost cause. Mine wants to come live with us," Linda added. "I told my husband over my dead body." Valerie laughed harder. "We are already looking at options to relocate her. There are some very good nursing homes now, with activities, with people her age. She will be better off there than being in the way in a house that needs young people." The words floated in the air like knives. I was still standing by the sideboard, holding the coffee pot. I smiled. "More coffee?" I asked with a sweet voice. "Yes, please." Valerie extended her cup without looking at me. I served her, slowly, carefully. And as I did, I looked at the clock on the wall. 10:30. "Excuse me a moment," I said calmly. "I am going for more pastries." I walked to the kitchen, but I didn't stop there. I continued to my room. I closed the door. I took out my cell phone. I called Mr. Arnold. "I am ready," I said simply. "On my way," he replied. I took a deep breath. I looked at myself one last time in the mirror, and I returned to the dining room with a tray of freshly warmed pastries. The friends kept talking. Valerie had completely relaxed, laughing, enjoying her role as hostess in a house that wasn't hers. 30 more minutes passed. I cleaned the kitchen slowly. I washed the dishes. I dried each one carefully. I moved with the calm of someone who knows exactly what is coming. And then, at 11:15, exactly, I heard the sound. A heavy engine stopping in front of the house. Air brakes hissing. Valerie was still talking, distracted. Her friends were looking at their cell phones. But I walked to the living room window and looked out. A moving truck parking. Big, white, with the logo of a transport company. Behind it, 3 cars. Mr. Arnold's, one belonging to Monica Harris, and an official one with government plates. Valerie finally noticed my posture at the window. "What is wrong, Mom Stella?" "Nothing, dear," I replied without turning around. "Just visitors arrived." "What visitors?" The doorbell rang. Long, official, impossible to ignore. "I will get it," I said calmly. I walked to the door. I felt the gazes of all the women on my back. I opened it. Mr. Arnold was there with his leather briefcase. By his side, Monica Harris with a thick folder. Behind them, a notary I didn't know with his seal and official stamps, and 2 judicial officers in impeccable uniforms. "Good morning, Stella," Mr. Arnold said with a smile. "Good morning, Arnold. Please come in." Everyone entered their shoes, echoing against the tile floor. The silence in the dining room was absolute. Valerie had stood up. Her face had lost all color. Her friends looked at her confused. What is going on?" Valerie stammered. Monica Harris spoke with a clear and professional voice. "Valerie Mendez, I am attorney Monica Harris, legal representative of Mrs. Stella Ramirez, widow of Cordero. I bring an eviction order for unlawful occupation of this property, as well as a civil lawsuit for misappropriation of assets in the amount of $85,000. The silence that followed was deafening. Valerie looked at me. For the first time, she really looked at me, and in her eyes I saw something that filled me with a dark but necessary satisfaction. Fear. "Mom Stella, what is this?" I walked to the center of the living room. All eyes were on me, and when I spoke, my voice came out firm, clear, without a hint of a tremor. "This, Valerie, is the day I take back my house." Time stood still. Or at least that is how it felt in that moment where all gazes converged on me, on Mr. Arnold, on the official documents Monica Harris held as if they were divine sentences. Valerie opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her friends had frozen with coffee cups halfway to their lips, like salt statues in the middle of my dining room. I do not understand. Valerie finally managed to say, her voice cracking. "Mom Stella, what is this? What is happening?" Mr. Arnold took a step forward, opening his briefcase with precise, rehearsed movements. "Let me explain, Mrs. Mendez. For the last 2 years, you have occupied this property, which belongs exclusively to Mrs. Stella Ramirez. In that time, you have sold family assets without authorization, modified the property without consent, and obtained economic benefits through deception. That is not true." Valerie's voice went up an octave. "This is my husband's house. I live here. We are family. This house," I intervened, and my voice sounded stronger than I expected, "is deeded solely in my name as it has been since 1983. Your husband, my son, has never been the owner of this property." Monica spread documents on the dining table right next to the plates with remnants of pancakes and eggs. Deeds in the name of Stella Ramirez. Will of Henry Cordero, where he clearly states that the property must remain solely in his wife's name. Notarized declaration of Mr. Cordero 3 months before his death, establishing specific protections against improper transfers. Valerie looked at the papers as if they were written in an alien language. But David signed he has power of attorney, a power of attorney obtained through deception. Monica took out more documents. Mr. David Cordero signed a document that was supposedly to help with property tax paperwork. The full scope was not explained to him. It was not done before a notary with his mother present, and it has been used for purposes that were never authorized. Therefore, it is void. This is ridiculous. Valerie tried to regain her composure, but her voice trembled. You can't just come in like this and kick me out of my house. I have rights. The rights you have, said Mr. Arnold with a calm that contrasted with Valerie's growing hysteria, are those of any occupant who must vacate a property when the legitimate owner requests it. You have 72 hours to leave the premises with your personal belongings. 72 hours, Valerie practically shouted. You can't do this. I am calling my lawyer. Please do, Monica replied. Any competent lawyer will tell you exactly the same thing we are telling you. This is not your property. It never was. And the legitimate owner is exercising her right. Valerie's friends had started gathering their bags, uncomfortable, wanting to escape this scene that had gone from a pleasant breakfast to a legal drama in a matter of minutes. I think we should go, Andrea murmured. Yes, Valerie. We will call you later, Sarah added, already walking toward the door. No. Valerie grabbed their arms. You are witnesses. You are seeing this. This woman is throwing us out on the street, me and her own son. Linda broke free from the grip gently, but firmly. Valerie, this is a legal matter. Between family. We shouldn't be here. But did you hear? She made you this breakfast to humiliate me. This was all a trap. Lucy, the last one heading to the door, stopped and looked directly at me. With all due respect, Valerie, what I heard during breakfast was you talking about putting your mother-in-law in a nursing home, in her own house. I think she has the right to defend herself. And they left. All four of them. Leaving Valerie alone in the middle of the living room, surrounded by lawyers, officers, and a mother-in-law who was no longer the invisible woman she thought she knew. In addition to the eviction order, Monica continued as if there had been no interruption. We have complete documentation of all the assets you sold without authorization. She unfolded more papers. Photographs, screenshots of online posts, German porcelain dinnerware, $1,500, sterling silver flatware, $2,925, $3,000, colonial cabinet, $5,000 gold pocket watch, $2,500 pawned and never recovered. And the list goes on to total $15,000 in sold items. Valerie had gone white as a sheet. Additionally, Mr. Arnold added, we have bank statements showing withdrawals from the joint account with your husband for repairs and improvements that were never made. Total $20,000. Total sum to restore. Monica closed the folder with a sharp snap. $85,000. You have 30 days to make the payment, or you will face criminal charges for misappropriation and fraud. Valerie let herself fall into a chair. Her hands shook. I do not have that money. Then I said, speaking for the second time, I suggest you start selling those designer bags, those expensive shoes, that white gold bracelet that cost $5,000, everything you bought with my family's money. She looked at me with pure hate. But behind the hate was something else. Disbelief, shock, the realization that she had completely underestimated the old woman she thought she could manipulate. Why? She whispered. Why all this? Why now? I walked toward her, slowly, with every step feeling taller, stronger, more myself. Because 2 weeks ago I served breakfast, and you complained in front of your friends. You said I only knew how to make bad food. You said you didn't know how you put up with me, and they all laughed. Valerie blinked, remembering. I smiled. I collected the cups in silence. I went to my room, and in that moment, something inside me said, enough. It was just a comment she tried to justify herself. No, I interrupted her. It was not just a comment. It was the last of thousands. It was the straw that broke the camel's back. It was the moment I decided I was no longer going to allow myself to be treated like trash in the house I built. The doorbell rang again. One of the officers opened the door. It was David, my son. Arriving from work, still in his office shirt, tie loose. He came in smiling, unprepared. What is everyone doing? The smile froze when he saw the scene. The documents. The officers. the moving truck visible through the open door. "Mom, what is happening?" And there it was, the moment I had feared most, facing my son, seeing his face when he realized that I knew, that I had discovered his betrayal. "David," I said, and my voice trembled just a little. "Come sit down. There are things you need to see." He walked in slowly, looking between Valerie, who was now crying silently, and me, who looked at him with a mix of love and disappointment, so deep it hurt physically. "Mr. Cordero." "Mr." Arnold extended his hand. "I am Arnold Vega, your family's lawyer for 30 years. Do you remember me?" "Yes, of course, Mr. Arnold. You handled the papers when my dad died." "Exactly. And now I am here because your mother asked for my help. Sit down, please." David sat down, confused, scared. Monica Harris showed him the same documents: the sales, the withdrawals, the nursing home, quotes the plans to sell the house. I saw his face go through a range of emotions: confusion, shock, disbelief, and finally horror. He turned toward his wife. "You sold my grandmother's things? My dad's watch? We needed money," she sobbed. "We had money. I work. You haven't worked in a year and a half. What did you need to sell my family's things for?" "For us. For our future. For when this house was ours. This house was never going to be ours." David stood up abruptly. "It is my mom's." "I always knew that. Why would you think—" He stopped. I saw him make the connections, remember the conversations. The papers she had put in front of him to sign to help with taxes, the suggestions about nursing homes for Mom's good. He turned toward me, and in his eyes I saw something I had never seen before: absolute shame. "Mom, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know she was selling things. The power of attorney I signed was only to manage my assets." I finished the sentence for him. "Did you read the document before signing it, son?" Silence. "Did you ask Mr. Arnold if it was legal? Did you consult me?" Valerie said it was just a formality, that it would make paperwork easier. I trusted. "You trusted your wife more than your mother," I said. And the words hurt coming out, but they needed to be said. "And while you trusted she was planning to kick me out of my own house, put me in a nursing home, sell the home your father and I built over 40 years. David let himself fall back into the chair, head in his hands. My God, Mom. I am sorry. I am so sorry." "Apologies do not bring back your father's watch," I said harshly. "Apologies do not return your grandmother's china. Apologies do not erase 2 years of humiliations. I know. What can I do? Tell me what to do to fix it." I looked at my son, the boy I had raised, the man who had allowed all this out of weakness, out of blindness, out of misdirected love. "You can start," I said, slowly holding up the eviction order. "You have 72 hours to get your things out of my house. You can go together or you can go separately. That is your decision. But you are leaving. Mom, I have nowhere to go. You have a job. You have a salary. You can rent an apartment like millions of people in this city. What you cannot do is keep living here. Not after this." Valerie stood up, swaying. "This is your fault." She pointed her finger at me, mascara running with tears. "You provoked it. You planned it all. That breakfast was a trap. Yes, I admitted without shame. It was. Because I needed witnesses to how you treated me. I needed your own friends to hear your plans. I needed this moment to be impossible to deny or hide. You are a manipulator. I am a 68-year-old woman." I interrupted her with a voice of steel who finally decided to defend herself. "Call it whatever you want. I call it justice." The judicial officers began to move. One of them spoke. "Mrs. Mendez, Mr. Cordero, you have 72 hours to vacate the property. You may take all your personal belongings. Any object belonging to Mrs. Ramirez must stay. The notary will take an inventory now to ensure nothing else is taken." The notary took out his camera and started photographing everything. The living room, the bedrooms, the furniture, every object was recorded. Mr. Arnold put a hand on my shoulder. "Are you okay?" I nodded, although I was trembling from head to toe. Not from fear, from liberation, from adrenaline, from the overwhelming feeling of having recovered something fundamental, my voice. "I am fine," I said. "Better than fine." The truck workers started coming in, not to take things that would come later, but to mark and classify, to ensure that when Valerie and David left, they only took what truly belonged to them. Valerie ran up the stairs, still crying. David stayed seated, head in his hands, destroyed, and I stood in the middle of my living room, my house, my home. For the first time in 2 years, I felt I could breathe. The next few hours were a whirlwind. The notary went through every room with his camera, documenting every piece of furniture, every object, every detail. Mr. Arnold and Monica checked papers in the dining room, verifying inventories against the lists I had prepared for weeks. David remained seated in the same chair, motionless, as if the weight of reality had crushed him. From upstairs came sounds of drawers opening and closing violently. Valerie was packing with fury. I approached my son. I sat in front of him. I waited until he finally lifted his head and looked at me with reddened eyes. "Mom!" His voice cracked. "I do not even know what to say." "Then listen," I replied firmly but without cruelty, because there are things you need to understand. He nodded, swallowing hard. "When your father died, this house became my only refuge. Not just because it was my home, but because every wall, every corner held 40 years of our life together. The sacrifices we made, the sleepless nights working, the dreams we achieved brick by brick. I know, Mom. No, you don't know. I interrupted him because if you knew, you never would have allowed Valerie to sell your father's watch. That watch your grandfather gave him when he turned 21. That watch your dad guarded all his life like a treasure." David closed his eyes, the pain evident on his face. "I searched for that watch for months after your father died." I continued. "I cried every night thinking I had lost it, that I had failed to protect something so important to him. And all the time, your wife had it pawned for $2,500 money. She used to buy clothes and jewelry while I cooked and cleaned as if I were the maid. Mom, I never saw you as a maid. But you never fully saw me, did you?" My voice rose slightly. "You never noticed how your father's photos disappeared, how the furniture he built with his own hands was replaced by modern trash, how the rose bushes he planted were torn out to put in green plastic. I worked all day. I thought they were just decorative changes. And the power of Attorney David?" I confronted him directly. "Was that also just decoration? You signed a document giving yourself control over my assets. Did you read what you were signing?" Silence was his answer. "Your wife put that paper in front of you. I took out the document and put it on the table. And you signed without asking, without consulting Mr. Arnold, without even telling me. Why?" "Because I trusted her," he whispered, "because she is my wife, and I thought she just wanted to help. And in me, son, did you not trust me? In your own mother who raised you, who gave you everything, who never failed you." Tears began to roll down his cheeks. "I am sorry, Mom. I was a fool, a blind and selfish fool." "Yes," I agreed without softening it. "You were. And meanwhile, your wife planned to lock me in a nursing home. I took the quote out of my pocket and put it in front of him, the page with the nursing home options, the handwritten note. Option 1, tell her it is for her health. Option 2, wait for her to get more frail." I watched him read. How his face went from sadness to anger. She was going to commit you and sell this house for $850,000, I added. "Buy a condo in the hills. Start your real life without the burden of the old mother-in-law who only knows how to cook badly. God." David stood up abruptly. "Valerie!" His scream resonated through the whole house. We heard hurried footsteps on the stairs. Valerie came down with swollen eyes, makeup destroyed. "What?" she replied with a defiant tone, although her voice trembled. David showed her the nursing home papers. "This? Were you seriously planning this? It was for her own good. Valerie tried to defend herself. She is old. This house is too much for her. In a nursing home, she would be better cared for. Lie. David threw the papers. It was so you could sell her house, so you would have money for your comfortable life while my mother, the woman who gave me life, rotted in a nursing home room. It is not her house forever. Someday it was going to be ours. It was never going to be ours, David roared. How could you think that? How could you be so... He fell silent, reality crashing down on him. Did you ever love me? He asked with a broken voice. Or was it just for the money, for the house, for what you thought you were going to inherit? Valerie opened her mouth, but nothing convincing came out. I loved you, she said finally, but it sounded hollow. No, David shook his head. If you loved me, you would have respected my mother. If you loved me, you wouldn't have sold my father's things. If you loved me, you wouldn't have made me sign documents without explaining the whole truth. He turned toward me. Mom, the power of attorney, I annul it. Here now. Whatever I have to sign, I sign. But I need you to know I never wanted to take your house. I never wanted to hurt you. I was a manipulated idiot, but it was never my intention. I know, son, I said softly. That is why you are here seeing all this, because you needed to see the truth. You needed to wake up. Mr. Arnold approached with a document, annulment of power of attorney. Sign here, David. My son took the pen and signed without hesitation. Then he signed other papers. Acknowledgement that the property is exclusively mine. Waiver of any future claim. Acceptance of the eviction order. When he finished, he dropped the pen and looked at me. Will you forgive me someday? You are my son, I replied with tears in my eyes. You will always be my son. But forgiveness takes time, and you have to earn it. Not with words, with actions. Anything, I will do anything. Start, I said firmly, helping me recover everything she sold, every object, every dollar, the $85,000 that must be restored. David turned to Valerie, who stepped back. We are going to sell everything you bought, he told her with an icy voice. Every bag, every shoe, every piece of jewelry. We are going to get my father's watch back from the pawn shop. We are going to pay back every dollar you stole from my mom. We do not have that much money. Then we will get a loan. I will sell my car. I will do what I have to do. But you are going to pay what you owe. Monica Harris intervened. You have 30 days to restore the full amount, or we will proceed with criminal charges. Misappropriation is a serious crime, Mrs. Mendez. You could face up to 8 years in prison. Valerie let herself fall onto the sofa, finally comprehending the magnitude of what she had done. I just wanted a better life at the cost of destroying mine, I said, without mercy, at the cost of stealing my dignity, my home, my peace. And you know what is worst, Valerie? That if you had been respectful, if you had treated me with a minimum of consideration, I would have shared everything with you. I would have been the mother-in-law who supported you, who loved you, but you chose humiliation, manipulation, theft. I am sorry, she cried. I do not care, I replied coldly. Your apologies do not give me back 2 years of my life. They do not give me back my husband's things. They do not erase your words. That old woman only knows how to make bad food. Those words made her shrink because she knew she had said them, and she knew that had been the mistake that triggered all this. The truck workers finished their inventory. The notary signed the final documents. The judicial officers confirmed the eviction order was in effect. 72 hours repeated one of them. After that, any remaining belonging will be considered abandoned, and the owner may dispose of it. David nodded. We will leave tomorrow. I do not need 72 hours. I will rent an apartment today. Together? I asked, looking between him and Valerie. There was a long pause. David looked at his wife with an expression I had never seen on him. Absolute disappointment. I do not know Mom, he said finally. I need to think. I need to process all this. But for now, yes, we will leave together. Because legally, she is still my wife. But if our marriage survives this... He left the sentence unfinished. Valerie sobbed silently but didn't protest. She had no argument left, no manipulation, no power. Mr. Arnold and Monica began to gather their things. Stella. Mr. Arnold hugged me. You did good. Henry would be proud. Thank you, Arnold, for everything, for helping me find my voice. When everyone left, the lawyers, the notary, the officers, the truck workers, I remained alone in the living room with David and Valerie. You can stay this last night, I said wearily. Tomorrow I want you gone, and every Sunday, David, you can come to eat if you want. Just you. So we can talk, so we can rebuild what broke. And me? Asked Valerie with a small voice. I looked at her. This woman who had humiliated me, robbed me, conspired against me. This woman who had tried to take everything from me. You, I said slowly, are not welcome in my house ever again. When you have paid every dollar of the $85,000 you owe when you have fulfilled your legal obligation, then only then will I consider if I can ever forgive you. But that will take years, many years. She didn't answer. She just lowered her head. I went up to my room. I took off the wine dress with embroidered flowers. I put on my comfortable pajamas. I sat on my bed with Henry's watch in my hands. I did it, love, I whispered. I got our house back. I got my dignity back. And for the first time in 3 years, I cried. But they were not tears of pain. They were tears of liberation, of victory, of having found the strength I didn't know I still had. That night, I slept deeply. And I dreamed of Henry smiling at me, telling me everything would be fine. He was right. Everything was going to be fine. The following Sunday, exactly 1 week after the breakfast that changed everything, I woke up with the sun coming through my window. Not the shy ray of light sneaking between borrowed curtains, but the full, generous sun bathing my room and my house. David and Valerie had left Saturday morning. I saw them load their suitcases into the rented car my son had gotten. Valerie didn't look at me once. David hugged me at the door long tight with that kind of hug that tries to say everything words cannot. I will call you tomorrow, Mom, he had said. I expect you Sunday for lunch, I replied. Just you. And that is how it was. I got up slowly, enjoying the silence. It was not the tense silence of before, charged with resentment and contained humiliation. It was a clean, peaceful silence, the silence of a home that had finally regained its balance. I walked through the house, through my house. Every step was a silent reclamation. The living room where there were no longer minimalist furniture pieces I didn't like. The dining room where my grandmother's tablecloth was back in its place. The kitchen where I could cook without feeling watched, judged, despised. There was work to be done, many things to restore. The empty spaces where the objects Valerie sold once were. The walls that needed new photographs of my life, of my history, of my Henry. But I had time, and I had peace. Mr. Arnold called at 10 in the morning. Stella, how did you wake up? Good, Arnold, very good. I have news. Valerie started selling her things. We already recovered $12,000, and David took out a personal loan for $20,000 more. They are going to meet the payments. And Henry's watch? We recovered it yesterday from the pawn shop. It is here in my office. You can come for it whenever you want. Tears sprang instantly. I am going there right now. I dressed carefully. Beige linen pants, a white embroidered blouse, my comfortable shoes, Henry's pearl necklace. I applied light makeup. I combed my hair with care. I wanted to look good. I wanted to feel good. The trip to Mr. Arnold's office I made in a taxi, watching the city pass by the window. How many times had I walked these streets with Henry holding hands, planning our future? How many times had we promised that nothing would separate us? And here I was a widow, but not defeated, alone, but not destroyed, stronger than I ever imagined. Mr. Arnold received me with a warm smile and handed me a black velvet box. Inside, shiny and restored, was Henry's pocket watch. He had had it cleaned and repaired. The gold shone like new. The mechanism worked perfectly. the soft and constant tick-tock like a beating heart. "Thank you," I whispered, pressing the watch against my chest. "Thank you for everything, Arnold. Henry made me promise I would take care of you if something happened, and I did. But Stella, the truth is, you took care of yourself. I just gave you the tools. You were the one who had the courage to use them." I returned home with the watch in my purse, touching it every few minutes to ensure it was real that I had recovered it. Sunday at 1 in the afternoon, David rang the bell. He was alone. He carried a bag of pastries from Old Man Charlie's Bakery and flowers. Red carnations, my favorites. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, son, come in." I had made mole poblano his favorite dish since childhood, the one Henry cooked and we made for him on all his birthdays. Red rice beans from the pot, fresh tortillas I bought at the market that morning. We sat at the table, the same table where so many family meals had taken place, but now it was just two, mother and son, trying to rebuild bridges that had been burned. "Mom, David began after the first bite, I have been in therapy." I looked at him surprised. I looked for a psychologist. I need to understand how I allowed all this to happen, how I was so blind, so weak. "You are not weak, David. You were manipulated." Maybe. But I was also complicit, signing that power of attorney without reading, never asking you how you felt, not noticing Dad's things were disappearing. All that was my responsibility. We ate in silence for a moment. The mole tasted exactly as it should, rich, complex, with that touch of chocolate Henry adored. "And Valerie?" I asked, finally. David sighed deeply. "We are separated, not divorced yet, but we live in different apartments. She is selling everything as we agreed. She worked with a consignment agency for the designer bags and jewelry. All the money goes straight to your restitution account. And you? How are you?" "Destroyed," he admitted with brutal honesty, but also relieved, as if I could finally see clearly after years of fog. "The therapist says Valerie was narcissistic, that she used manipulation techniques, that she slowly isolated me from you, without me realizing. I do not want you to think this was only her fault." "It is not," I interrupted him. I also had fault because at some point I chose the comfort of not seeing over the discomfort of confronting. I chose to believe her lies because it was easier than admitting I had made a mistake marrying her. His eyes filled with tears. Dad never liked her, right? The question took me by surprise, but it was true. Your father had reservations. He told me once, months before dying Stella, that girl looks at our house as if she were counting money, but I told him not to judge so quickly, that David loved her and that was enough. He was right. Yes. But a father cannot live his son's life. You had to learn alone, and although it hurt God how it hurt to see all this happen, I also understand that some lessons are only learned by falling. David wiped his tears with a napkin. "Will you ever be able to forgive me completely?" I stood up, walked around the table, and hugged him. This son of mine, this man who made mistakes but was trying to mend them. I already forgave you, David. The day you signed the annulment of the power of attorney, the day you stood by my side, the day you accepted the truth, even though it hurt, that day I forgave you. He cried in my arms like he hadn't since he was a child, and I held him, remembering all the times I had carried him when he fell, when he was scared, when the world seemed too big, because that is what mothers do. They hold, they forgive. But also, and this I had learned the hard way, they must set limits. They must demand respect. They must remember that love does not mean accepting mistreatment. When he calmed down, we returned to the table. We finished eating. I served coffee and the pastries he had brought. "Mom," he said while biting into a chocolate shell, "I want to help you restore the house, recover the things that were lost, not financially. I know Valerie must pay that, but physically. Help you find antiques similar to the ones she sold, paint the walls, plant new rose bushes in the garden. Would you do that? Of course it is the least I can do. Besides," he smiled sadly, "it reminds me of when Dad and I worked together in the shop. Those were good times." "Yes," I agreed, touching the pearl necklace. good times. The following weeks, we established a new routine. David came every Sunday to eat. During the week, he spent some afternoons helping me with restoration projects. We cleaned the garden. We planted new rose bushes, red, yellow, and white like before. We painted the walls my favorite color, a warm beige that made the whole house feel like a hug. I recovered the family photographs Valerie had stored away. I placed them in new frames all over the house. Henry and I on our wedding day, David as a baby, our anniversaries, Christmases, birthdays. All our history was visible again. Mr. Arnold helped me track down some of the sold items. We found the German porcelain dinnerware with the collector in the hills. When I explained the situation, she agreed to return it to me for the same price she had paid. I understand the sentimental value, she told me. My own mother went through something similar with a terrible daughter-in-law. We did not recover everything. Some things were lost forever. But I learned that objects, however important, were not essential. What was essential was dignity. Respect the ability to stand in your own house and feel at home. 3 months after the breakfast, Valerie completed the payment of the $85,000. She sold everything of value she had. David confessed to me that she had returned to live with her mother in another state, defeated without the luxurious lifestyle she had built at my expense. "Do you feel pity for her?" he asked me. "No," I answered honestly. "I feel pity for the woman she could have been if she had chosen to be a good person instead of being greedy. But the consequences of our actions follow us. She is living hers." David and Valerie divorced 6 months later. It was quick without drama. She asked for nothing because legally nothing corresponded to her. They never owned anything. Everything had always been mine. A year after the breakfast that changed everything, I took a decision. I opened my house, my beautiful restored house, to give traditional cooking classes. Twice a week, young people from the neighborhood came to learn the recipes my mother taught me that her mother taught her. Perfect pancakes, authentic mole, delicious pies. Mrs. Stella, a 20-year-old girl named Lucy, told me you cook with so much love. It shows in every dish. It is just that cooking, I explained while we kneaded dough, is not just mixing ingredients. It is transmitting history. It is honoring those who came before. It is creating something with your hands that nourishes not only the body, but the soul. And while I taught, while I shared my kitchen with these young women hungry for knowledge and tradition, I felt I had finally found my purpose in this stage of my life. It was not just surviving, it was flourishing. David met someone new, a woman named Patricia, an elementary school teacher, simple, genuine, who greeted me with respect the first time she came to the house. She did not call me Mom Stella with that condescending tone. She called me Mrs. Ramirez, until I told her, "You can call me Stella, dear." I saw how my son smiled differently with her, more authentic, more himself. "Do you think I am ready for another relationship?" he asked me one Sunday. I think I answered carefully that you learned important lessons, that you went to therapy, that you faced your mistakes. So yes, I think you are ready. But this time, son, choose with your heart, but also with your eyes wide open. "I will, Mom. I promise." At night, when the house was silent and I sat in the living room with a cup of tea, I looked around and felt a deep peace. This house had been a battlefield. It had been the scene of my humiliation, but it had also become the scene of my resurrection. I took Henry's watch out of my pocket. Now I always carried it with me and held it under the lamplight. The constant, reliable tick-tock, like the beat of a heart refusing to stop. I kept my promise, love. I whispered as I did every night. I took care of our son. I helped him find his way back. And I did not lose my dignity. I recovered it. I closed my eyes and could swear I felt his presence, not in a ghostly or strange way, but in the way he had always been present. In the walls we built together, in the memories we shared, in the love he planted so deep in my heart that not even death could tear it out. 2 years later, David married Patricia in a small ceremony in the garden of my house. The rose bushes we had planted together bloomed splendidly, filling the air with their sweet perfume. When I passed the ring to David to put on Patricia, I whispered, "Your father would be proud of the man you have become." I am too. Patricia hugged me after the ceremony. "Thank you for welcoming me into your family, Stella, and thank you for teaching David what real respect means." "It was a hard lesson for all of us," I replied. "But difficult lessons are the ones that transform us most." Now, sitting here in my living room, 70 years old, turned a month ago, I look back and see the whole path. I served that breakfast 2 years ago. I heard those words that destroyed me. That old woman only knows how to make bad food. I do not know how I put up with her. I smiled. I collected the cups. I went to my room. And 2 hours later, a truck stopped in front of my house and changed everything. Because that was the day I stopped being the silent victim and became the protagonist of my own story. I learned that respect is not begged for. It is demanded. I learned that love does not mean enduring humiliation. I learned that it is never too late to stand up and say enough. I learned that true wealth is not in what you possess, but in what you do not allow them to take from you. Your dignity, your voice, your right to live in peace in your own space. And I learned that sometimes the bravest act you can do is defend yourself. Even when the world has taught you that older women should be sweet, quiet, compliant. Even when your own family expects you to make yourself small to make room for them. At 70, I stood up again. And this time, no one, absolutely no one, will ever make me feel small in my own house again. Because this house is me. And I am this house. And we both remain standing, firm, dignified, unbreakable. If this story touched your heart, if it made you reflect on the value of defending your dignity, regardless of age, leave me a comment telling me what impacted you the most. Like if you believe it is never too late to recover your voice. And subscribe to keep listening to stories of women who refuse to give up. And tell me, where are you listening from? I love knowing these stories reach hearts all over the world. Because in the end, it doesn't matter if you are 30, 50, or 70. It does not matter if you live in Mexico, Spain, Argentina, or any corner of the planet. What matters is remembering this. Your dignity is not negotiable. Your respect is not on sale. And your value does not diminish with the years. It only refines. It strengthens. It becomes unbreakable like steel tempered by fire. Never forget who you are. Never allow them to make you feel less than what you are worth. And when that moment comes, that moment when you have to choose between false peace and true dignity, choose dignity. Always. Because life is too short to live it on your knees. The end.